Welcome back, guys. We've got a bit of a news update here for you today. So one of the first things that I wanted to jump into is some news that came out of Utah, actually. There was a bill here, HB 441, that came out of Utah, where lawmakers advance a bill that could close Utah stores on Sundays and other religious days. James, did you get a chance to read through this bill? What were your thoughts on this bill?
Well, they're couching it obviously in some veiled language. For example, Ken Ivory has stated elsewhere, he's referenced Article 1, Section 7, Clause 2 of the Constitution in trying to defend Sunday rest. And he's a part of the committee for Project 2025. And but even though he's definitely stated his mission is to protect Sunday rest, he hasn't explicitly mentioned that in this bill. But they are moving forward with enacting some teeth for like employers who refuse to grant days off. So if you decline, for example, an employee's sincere religious belief, you could get fined $10,000 or $20,000, or I believe as high as $50,000 if there's a repeat offense per offense. And so it's obviously establishing a movement to try and create teeth, if you will.
Right.
So, it's not hard to see where he's trying to get this to go, because if you can get more people on board with this, then you're going to see more people requesting and demanding such laws in the future. We know the end push is going to be by popular demand, and it's no surprise to see movements like this kind of fueling that fire.
I was actually reading through some of the intricacies of this, and I think this is actually specifically as a result of the Nothing Bundt Cakes debacle that came out of Utah, because Nothing Bundt Cakes wanted to have the franchises stay open on Sundays, and there was a few franchise owners, or not owners of the franchise, but owners of the local store, basically, franchisees, I guess you would call them, that did not want to stay open on Sunday. So, I look at this, and if you read the actual language, it says it prohibits a franchisor. So that would be like, let's say, Taco Bell Corporation. It prohibits the corporation from requiring the local store to open on a religious day. So when you look at it in that standpoint, it's not actually necessarily a negative.
Yeah. I mean, they're trying to go about it from a perspective that I think is going to garner them broad support.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that that's why it got pushed through for the second vote that they're planning on going for. But the thing is, we've been told by council that the beginning stages, the beginning pushes, the beginning movements of a national Sunday law are going to appear good. Yeah. That it's for a beneficial cause, that it is, protecting people. And so you hear of people like, even our vice president talking about how we need to, preserve liberty when it comes to religion. That you've had a lot of the main front runners, even of Project 2025, say, yes, we want to preserve, the First Amendment. We want to preserve people's ability to, practice their sincerely held religious beliefs. But is that going to hold up in the long run?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Right. And the reason why I think this is important is where it's pushing us. Right? Like, why do we do these episodes? Why are we doing these specifically?
Well, that's a good question, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that are going to say, well, we've seen this for so long, you guys are just crying wolf, wolf, wolf. But the reality is that there's a need to keep this before the people, to be aware of what's going on. The more people that talk about it, the more people are going to become aware of the issues, because what you don't want to have is say, okay, we're not going to cry wolf. We're just going to say it like right at the last minute. I mean, your voice is going to be so small at that point, trying to warn, right before it happens. I mean, if there was a nuclear bomb that goes off, you don't want to wait till like the nuclear bomb is about ready to explode. You want to tell people way in advance so everybody can pass it on to their friends,
Mm-hmm.
so that everybody knows, hey, this is going to happen.
Right.
Beware. And it's also important to know the movements of like what's going to happen in the future, the
Right.
movements of these people as they're pushing for it.
Well, I think about Noah. I mean, he
Yeah.
preached for 120 years.
Yep.
And so the thing is should we let our voice say, well, our fathers and our forefathers were saying this is going to happen?
Yeah.
Or should we be saying, no, I mean, it doesn't matter. If we have the
Mhm.
truth, you can preach it for 120 years and it's still going to be true.
Yep. That's right.
Where I think this is important to look at is, although this language in here may be veiled in a way that seems to push religious liberty. See, oh, well, if you own the local franchise, you should be able to close on a certain day.
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily argue with that, but it's where they're going. So take a look at this video right here. This is an interesting little video clip. Let's take a quick look.
You have to reward friends and punish enemies. It's not enough just to release the good guys. You then have to terrorize, absolutely terrorize. Your enemies should be having nightmares every night thinking about what the Christians are going to do to them. And it's like, that's not Christian. That sounds terrible. Jesus said to love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. I'm talking about doing it all through categories, through the proper avenues. That's what the civil magistrate is. Romans 13, he is a terrorize. I use that word intentionally. It's a biblical word. He is a terror to those who do evil. The Christian prince, Christians should be in government. And those Christians who pursue political office and attain it by the grace of God should absolutely be a terror to anybody who is a threat to Christians here in America.
Yeah, so this is Joel Webbon. He is one of the pastors or leaders associated with Right Response Ministries, and they are a vehemently pro-Christian nationalist movement. He has talked openly about blue laws quite a lot. And, he's referencing here actually being a terror to your enemies, talking about language from Romans 13, but really in the context of kind of more what the Jesuit Bellarmine actually advocated for, the effectiveness of terrorism against the Manichaeans, the Albigenses, where Rome's position in uniting church and state was to persecute those who disagreed. He's wanting to head our nation back to that kind of a principle where church and state can unite, and you can literally cause terror to your enemies who spiritually disagree with you. Now, he's relying on Romans 13. One of the remarks that Paul makes in Romans 13 is actually Romans 13 verse 7 is, render therefore to all their dues, tribute to whom tribute is due, custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear, honor to whom honor. And this is Paul's commentary originally, if you look at the context of Romans 13, is a reference back to Matthew 22. And in Matthew 22, Christ was brought actually a coin. And in Matthew 22:19, he says, show me the coin used for paying the tax. Christ asks the question, whose image is this and whose inscription? And so they say, Caesar's, they reply. He says to them, so give back to Caesar's what is Caesar's, and to God's what is God's. The problem that Joel is making here, the mistake that he's making, is he's talking about the Sabbath, which does not bear the name of Caesar, but bears the name of God. So therefore, when we look at the context of Romans 13, the state has no business enforcing that which does not bear its name. God, the Sabbath bears God's name, right. And it has it's something that it's not Caesar's at all. In fact, would very much fit the context of where Christ divided church and state in Matthew 22 and said, render unto Caesar's that which is Caesar's, but unto God's that which is God's.
Right.
And this was the very principle that the disciples relied upon when they were brought before the councils and tried for their faith, is, you might be the state leaders, but you have no business to come and dictate, our conscience.
Right.
And so it's very interesting. He's trying to appeal to Romans 13, but completely ignoring the context that Paul is building upon, which is a sermon about the very words of Christ in Matthew 22.
Well, and that's why the Ten Commandments are broken into the first four
Yeah.
relating to God, and then the last six relating to man. I think that you could make a very strong argument that the last six should be enforced on a state basis.
Yes, but the caveat to that is you're never really going to actually enforce those last six. All you can do is enforce outward civil behavior towards
Yes.
somebody else, because the reality is God's law stretches into our very thoughts and actions.
Right.
And so you're never going to be able to go and say, well, don't lust after that woman, because
That's true.
you can't enter into somebody's mind. And
But from an outward civil aspect, you could
yes.
you could shut down brothels and
outward
et cetera.
civil perspective, yes, but inside of one's thoughts, no.
Right. Okay. Did you see this article right here? And this is talking about JD Vance. Load the muskets, an emergent Catholic rights hopes for the White House to the Vatican.
Well, in the 19th century, there were a lot more blatant examples in the American press reckoning to this kind of idea that in times of emergency, Catholicism wanted to have secret societies formed. They wanted to have their people armed. They wanted to be ready to fight for the faith in a very militant sense.
It's interesting to just see this kind of rhetoric being pushed these days. But it's not just one news article. There's multiple. For him or against him, VP Vance brings national attention to Catholic social teaching. What is Catholic social teaching? How does that differ from Protestant social teaching?
Well, Catholic social teaching is for the common good, and it's for the good of all, supposedly. But really, it's about the majority. And the problem with that is it's antithetical to a constitutional republic, because the Constitution's about protecting the minority. It's about protecting the individual, and individual rights fly in the face of Roman Catholicism. And if you think about this, back in the days of Christ, when he was here on this earth, during that time frame, the scribes and Pharisees, asked a question that, like, as a result of like one man shall the whole nation perish, So part of their logic for killing Christ was to do what they thought was good for the majority. The common good was the very rationale that they appealed to in order to crucify Christ.
Right. Well, I think about Nazi Germany. Would you go with the majority then? Or would you go with the minority?
Yeah, obviously not. There's been a lot of times where the majority has steamrolled the rights of the minority. And the common good, it sounds good in theory, but fundamentally the way Catholicism has implemented it, it denies principles in the Constitution that protect individual liberty.
Right. Here's another interesting article by the National Catholic Reporter. And this one is actually talking about JD Vance's conversion to Catholicism and how it helped shape his views. And basically, it also talks about this little-known group of Catholic thinkers, and they kind of term themselves post-liberal, and that's a term that Vance has actually used himself. So this isn't your typical Catholic conservatives. They want a muscular government, one that's going to basically enforce what they want. They basically envision a counter-revolution in which they take over the government bureaucracy, all the institutions that have sway like universities, and they replace the entrenched elites with their own people acting on their vision of what the common good is. And there's quotes in there, we're talking about people that prefer right-wing authoritarian regimes. And there's discussion about citizens becoming subjects and personal liberties subjected to administrative despotism. And one of the things that's interesting is Vance has actually tried to downplay, at times, Catholicism's impact on his policymaking. But in August, he talked about Catholic social teaching, and he said that, it certainly influences how I think about issues. One of the things that's interesting about the post-liberal regime is how they talk about easing or removing church-state separation. Some of the things that they push are good, like banning pornography. But one of the last things this article mentions is how the postliberal regime wants to reimpose laws limiting business on the Sabbath. The article also mentions Adrian Vermeule, who has advocated for common good constitutionalism, in which the government enacts strong rule in the interest of attaining the common good. I'm sure you can see how this would be concerning to the Adventist worldview. You know, we have a little video clip here of JD Vance at a prayer breakfast, and I'm curious what your thoughts are about this short little clip I'll play.
This is the 20th year, I believe, of the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast, and it seems like we're doing pretty good here with the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast. And of course, this breakfast holds a very special place in my heart. As Maureen mentioned, I came here last year as a very young senator, not knowing how much my life would change. And I'm thankful to God, but also thankful to the friendship of the people in this room for helping us get there, because I think that we have turned a new page in Washington, D.C., and we are going to take advantage of the opportunity that God has given us. While you're certainly not always going to agree with everything that we do in President Trump's administration, I think that we can say that President Trump, though not a Catholic himself, has been an incredibly good president for Catholics in the United States of America. Where I think President Trump's policy is most in accord with Christian social teaching and with the Catholic faith is that more than any president of my lifetime, President Trump has pursued a path of peace. And the Trump administration promises you that whether it's here at home with our own citizens or all over the world, we will be the biggest defenders of religious liberty and the rights of conscience. And I think those policies will fall to the benefit of Catholics in particular all over the world. The one thing that I will promise you is that you're always going to have an open door with me and with the president. I think that you've already seen that. And if you haven't, please come and bring your concerns. And some of you have already brought many concerns to me over the last 30 days, but also your attaboys, because I think that part of being a good presidential administration for people of faith all over the United States, part of it is listening to people of faith when they have concerns. And I think that it's important, and I'll make this commitment to you in front of God and in front of all those television cameras back there, that we will always listen to people of faith and people of conscience in the United States of America. You have an open door to the Trump administration, even and especially maybe when you disagree with it. Catholicism, Christianity at its root, I think teaches our public officials to care about the deep things, the important things, the protection of the unborn, the flourishing of our children, and the health and the sanctity of our marriages. And yes, we care about prosperity, but we care about prosperity so that we can promote the common good of every citizen in the United States of America. So while again, I will never be perfect, I will always try to remind myself that the goal of our public policy is to promote the common good, and I will fight for that every single day that I am a public official. You'll sometimes hear people say, well, we'll let the clergy talk about matters of the church, but we can ignore them when it comes to matters of public policy. I think that's the wrong way to look at it. That's certainly not the right way to look at it for me.
Yeah, that really got me thinking about John 11, verse 50. Nor consider that it is expedient for us that one man should die for the people, and that the whole nation perish not. So he's appealing to that same kind of principle for the common good. Mm-hmm. And, Amy Coney Barrett and some of the Trump-appointed Supreme Court justices appeal to that same principle. Mm-hmm. They come from that Catholic background. We're seeing the United States shift that direction, and the image of the beast kind of starting to form as America becomes more Catholic. Mm-hmm. And it's heading that direction where when that image is fully formed, we're going to see Sunday rest by law coming.
Mm. Did you notice how he talked about how Trump is one of the best presidents for Catholics?
I'm not surprised. He has advanced how many Catholic Supreme Court judges now? Several,
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then recently we also had the White House. We had the Ash Wednesday, and there was actually some interesting pictures, some interesting things that were coming out of the White House with that as well. So you see more support towards Catholicism, I think, than we've ever seen in politics in the United States before.
Yeah.
There used to be a time when there was a lot of questioning. There was news headlines about whether or not they should vote for the first Catholic president. You remember that?
Yeah.
And there was all these headlines like, this was the big question. is should we even have a Catholic president? Now, Trump is not Catholic. Biden was. But he now has a Catholic VP who's very vocal. I would say who's more of a strong Catholic than Biden was. And it's interesting to see where this is pushing us in the stream of time. We had a couple interesting articles here that you found.
Yeah.
So what are we looking at here? Explain this to me.
So this is the Annals of Roger Hovden, and it comes from the year 1201. You're looking at the discussion of an abbot back in the days of William the Conqueror.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that was taking place at the height of Roman power at that time was that there was a prohibition against buying or selling or doing commerce on Sunday.
Mm.
And so Sunday laws were a part of medieval England.
Mm-hmm.
And it was exciting to find this manuscript. I've had a very difficult time trying to locate some of these older manuscripts. This particular one finally found with Cambridge Corpus Christi College, MS 175, and located this particular quote on folio 144R. But one of the things that this highlights is at the height of Rome's power during her was period.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about the was, is not, and yet is period in Bible prophecy.
Mm-hmm.
These were the sorts of civil financial coercions that took place. So it should be no surprise to us at the end of time who's going to come back and do this again. But I had another one as well.
Mm-hmm. Right here.
Yeah, so this is Bernald of Constance, who actually recorded in the year 1084 that William the Conqueror, he made all the land of the English tributary to the Roman pontiff, and you can actually see in the Latin there the Romano Pontifici, and did not allow anyone in his power to buy or sell anything who was found disobedient to the apostolic see. So there's the apostolice sedis, or apostolic see, there in the Latin on the far right there.
That's almost 1,000-year-old manuscript right there.
Yeah, almost 1,000 years old. And here we can see evidence of financial coercion that took place. And so,
that same buying and selling is what's referenced in Revelation.
Yeah.
The Antichrist power that is going to cause a mark.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have the mark, you can't buy or sell.
Yep. It's going to be the same thing happening all over again.
It's very interesting. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and I hope you will join us next time. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel as we continue to talk about current events in light of Bible prophecy and where this is pushing us in the United States and where it's pushing the rest of the world.